RYSE is a nonprofit youth center in Richmond, California, and it serves youth in Richmond and West Contra Costa County. It was created in 2005 through the grassroots organizing of the youth themselves in the community. The center just recently celebrated, I believe, its 12th anniversary. And RYSE provides programs including programs in media, arts and culture, youth organizing, education and justice, and community health. Today, it serves more than 3,500 youth members that, again, are coming from the city of Richmond as well as West Contra Costa County. 98% of RYSE's youth are people of color, and 12% identify as LGBTQ. Dan Riley, I'm going to hand it over to you. And I was wondering if you could introduce the rest of the panel and tell us more about the RYSE Center, where it is and where it's going.
Cool. Thank you, Winston. Appreciate that. So my name is Dan Riley. I'm the Innovations Director here at RYSE. And I also have a couple of other co-workers here with me, Cece Gordon and Isaiah Grant, who you'll hear from in a second, and I'll introduce each of them. So first off, I just want to say, thank you for the opportunity to come share. We've had a really amazing partnership with APA and Phillips Architecture on this project, and we're really excited to talk about it and to share a little bit. So first off, to really to build on what Winston was sharing, I'd like to pass it off to Cece. Cece is the Media Arts and Culture Manager here at RYSE, Poet Laureate of the City of Richmond, graduate with a master's degree from California College of the Arts, and also was a youth member of Raw Talent, which is an organization that eventually merged with RYSE and formed our performing arts program here at RYSE. So is also what we like to refer to as a Pathways staff member, somebody who was a young person in the program who's now a staff member. So Cece, could you just maybe in a couple minutes, like we talked about, just share a little bit about, what is RYSE, who are we, and kind of what is our positioning in the community of Richmond?
Absolutely. So first, it's great to be here with you all. So thank you all for joining. And as Dan said, my name is Cece. And so what I wanted to share about RYSE is that our goal is basically to eliminate barriers for young people in the most basic way, right? And so that looks like, are young folks able to have access to food? Do young folks have access to tutoring? Do young folks have access to therapy services? Pretty much anything that you can think of that might be a barrier. Our job is to try to work through making spaces for that. The really amazing thing about RYSE is, yes, we serve young people, but in addition to that, we are really rooted in the community. So as we serve young folks, our goal is to obviously serve their families as well. And so we want to make sure that we're able to connect with community as much as possible. And that can look like a number of things, from being able to give out food to different families, being able to, especially during this pandemic, we're able to support families financially with different stipends as we're moving through this really intense pandemic. Really another amazing thing about RYSE is making sure that young folks know that they have a voice. Their voice is extremely powerful. And there's this idea that young folks are the future, but we try to teach that young folks are the present and the future, right? So that young folks have an understanding that they are leading what we are moving into. And RYSE is really built upon a foundation of the theory of liberation. And I'll close with just saying that what that means is that we are not teaching young folks how to maneuver through systems, but we're actually teaching them how to disarmor those systems, how to break those systems and create systems that actually work and are made for them and by them. And so that's kind of a snapshot of what we do at RYSE, but all of it is really rooted in love and community. Thank you.
Thank you, Cece. So one of the reasons why we're kind of starting here is we felt in conversations preparing for today is so important to kind of start with the story of like, who and what are we trying to do? Because we're talking about a built environment, but it's a built environment that holds and houses RYSE, our vision for the community, and really holds and houses as a built environment that is a reflection of the wants, needs, desires, and visions of young people of color in this community. So I'll talk about this a little bit more in a second, but we worked with about 150 young folks in really dreaming and envisioning what RYSE Commons will be. And that was focus groups, that was charrettes, that was a summer-long program and intensive day-long programs and surveys. And Cece was a part of that a number of years ago when she was a little bit younger, still young compared to some of us on this call, but and Isaiah also participated in that as well. And so it's how we grounded the project. So it's how we wanted to ground this conversation as well. So I'll pass it over to Isaiah Grant, who young member came up through the program, I think is the most recent RYSE staff member, right? As of a few months ago. So we're super excited to have him on staff, but has been a leader in the space for many, many years as a young person. And Isaiah, you know, what I'm hoping you could do, like we talked about, can you just describe just briefly like your experiences at RYSE, kind of like what it means and feels like to you, and then help just dream us into the future space that a few of us have in our backgrounds, like just dream us into what you think RYSE Commons will be like, feel like, just kind of take us there in your mind for a few minutes.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Isaiah, and I'm the video production assistant. And just like how Dan said, I am one of the pipeline staff. So I was one of the young members inside of the space and showed a lot of leadership, and I became one of the staff. So with my, I would say, brief like idea or just feeling when like being at RYSE, when I first started being at RYSE, I was shy, and just being at that space, over time, I felt like I've just grown. I was with a family. Like this RYSE was like my second home, my second family I could come to and just truly be myself away from like my actual home and stuff like that. And I got to meet new people while being inside the smaller RYSE space. Cause since it was so small, like it's like we will always be bumping into people. Like you'd be like, hey, how you doing? It just like grow that community. Like you ended up at first might not knowing this person, but just cause y'all have that small interaction, you'll like the connection between each other grew stronger and stuff like that. And that was the one thing with being at RYSE. And what I dream for in the RYSE Commons, it may be a bigger space compared to like the old RYSE. It may be a bigger space, but just cause we're in a bigger space doesn't mean that we're not gonna lose that connection. Like that's the one thing that I feel like that we should still like, that we gonna keep a hold on, like having that family connection between one another. Being further away from each other is still just gonna make us try to be stronger and try to be there for one another. And just having a bigger space is just gonna be even better for like younger people, young creators and stuff like that. Having that big space, it will be showing that like there's no limit with the youth. And I see that with the youth, and with me, there's no limit on how creative you can do this or creative you can do that. Just being in the RYSE Commons space, I want that to just be a way where youth can come in. It'd be a safe place. Automatically you come in, you feel calmer in what you are like when you came in, before you came in, stuff like that. And just meeting new people and just connecting with people that you may not have and that connected with before. So that's like the dream idea of RYSE Commons, if I explained it well enough, Dan.
Any way you would have explained it would have been well enough and perfect, Isaiah. So thank you for sharing. And thank you actually just leading me into the final piece before I turn it back over to Winston. You know, I alluded to it earlier. We worked with a lot of young people to really envision what they wanted and needed out of a future space. And so, you know, what we heard a lot was just first and foremost, a place to be. So currently at RYSE, you don't have to be in a programming to be in the space. You can just come in and play video games or watch TV or get food or just relax, just decompress, just be. And it was also a place where community was built, and Isaiah spoke to that piece as well. Those are components that we heard consistently from young people in different ways that they wanted and needed. Kind of a fluidity of indoor and outdoor space. I mean, that's my language for it, but young folks were saying that in so many different ways, a sense of openness and spaciousness to just decompress. So there was and then a flow. So, you know, we work with young folks that are involved in the legal system, are court mandated to be here, young folks that come in because they want to make music or their friends brought them. And right now there's this like flow to the space. It's a circular, it's kind of like a donut. So there's really there's just an intermingling and mixing. There's no like stigma of somebody that's like seeking out, you know, talking with a therapist versus learning how to make a video, like we're kind of in community. And so these are things that we heard from young folks that either they wanted to hold on to as we significantly expanded our space, or that they wished that we could do here, but didn't have the space to do. And from that, you know, I worked to really capture that. I think we ended up with like 39, like a list of like 39 things we needed from this space, and 100 images from Google that kind of illustrated what young folks were you know, dreaming about and thinking about that. And that's actually what we brought to APA. And so this is kind of what the community of young folks and our staff and some community partners are saying that like we need in the space. And it was from that platform that the built environment started to take shape. And why I was so excited to do this when Winston approached me about it is I really feel strongly and believe that the success of this project to date and the success that we will have in the future upon completion is because APA really understood RYSE from the very beginning, asked the questions they needed to ask to understand us, to listen to folks like Isaiah and Cece and myself, who was consolidating this information, and took the time to understand us before diving into the nuts and bolts, no pun intended, of the project, right? And I think that has continued to play out in some really important ways. So, you know, I know that we want to get to some of those nuts and bolts. So I'll stop there. I'll pass it back over to Winston to kind of continue this, and you know, we'll stay on and maybe I'll chime in later, but I just want to lay that foundation for how, as a client and as a community of young people here, like we kind of see the relationship with the architect. So did that get it? Now I'll ask the same type of question. Did that get us to where we wanted to be, Winston? Oh, I think you're on mute still.
Hey everyone, sorry about that as we figure out our technology here. That actually gets us really into a good spot into looking at the beginning of this design process. And got a quick video to share where RYSE Youth are actually exploring the design through 3D and VR goggles. So I'm going to share my screen.
What is that? Virtual reality of the new ride.
I go inside here.
Oh, that's crazy.
Oh, this is nice. There's a lot of people.
This wrong. That look like that would be Geo.
Ooh, can I see the new ride?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a new RYSE?
Whoa, that's crazy.
I feel like it's good to catch their attention because they'll want to find out more about that different thing in their community, and then they would want to know more about services and just having more resources around them.
If you're gearing towards young people, they have to feel like comfortable. They have to feel like it's at home. It look hella dope. It look like it's a lot of like space for things and opportunities, and people don't feel like it's home.
Richmond is beautiful, it's amazing, but it has a multitude of challenges. And so a place like RYSE Commons would allow them to kind of filter in and be able to like lay these things out. Like I need to talk about my trauma, but maybe I don't want to talk about it in this particular way. RYSE Commons is the place for you to be like, no, this is mine. It's a property that is not going to leave. Like we're gonna stay here. We have a home here. And just giving them opportunities to be able to grow and imagine themselves past 25.
How do you feel? Or what that look like?
It was a play up in there.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You like it? Are you excited about the new building?
Yes, I'm gonna be all in there. That'd be raw. That's gonna be raw.
I want the youth of Richmond to have an understanding of who they are, meaning understanding their strength, their power, and their capabilities, and then start applying their power and their capabilities.
This is nice. Who made this? This is nice.
That's the future of RYSE.
I like it.
You like it?
Are you excited?
Yes, I am.
It's nice. Hold on. It's nice. It is.
It all seems worth it, especially the wait.
My dream for young folks here in Richmond is to own this place, is to be able to grow up and say, like, this is my community and we have this. We have a center that genuinely cares about the youth. Like, we have all of these opportunities. So just really being able to take ownership in this community and not pushing out young folks of color specifically in Richmond. So really seeing a 360 being able to start with this physical building. I'm really excited for RYSE Commons, and I'm excited to be of service and to see what I can do to help the next generation blossom.
Okay, that was an amazing video put together by Dan and his team at RYSE. I hope it gives you a flavor of just some of the outreach and process that APA and RYSE conducted in the design of the center. So with that, I'd like to jump into the design of the center. So again, RYSE is located in Richmond, California. It's at the corner of 41st and Bissell. So kind of zooming into the site here, what we had at the beginning of the project was an existing 1970s former county administration building that RYSE had been in for something like 10 years. And what this project was going to do was really re-envision both that building, but the whole property extending to the west as a new campus for RYSE that would become known as RYSE Commons. The design focuses on two buildings that are grouped around a central courtyard, and that central courtyard connects back into the building with open spaces that are lobby/hangout spaces in the new building, and collaboration spaces in the existing building, which would also be renovated by this project. Here's some views of the central courtyard. And then looking towards the existing building. And then along the street, the new building would serve as the gateway to the new campus. And you would also be greeted by these pop-up art spaces, which we'll tell you a little bit more about as we proceed with the tour. So as we proceed into the tour, I'm going to jump back and forth between some floor plan views, some renderings, and what we're calling the Matterport camera. The Matterport camera is a 360-degree camera that basically Mike from AIA went out to the site, shot views of the project, which is under construction, and the camera combined with software outputs a 3D model that you can basically click through, advance through, look through. So we'll see a little bit of that technology. This is, as Mike mentioned at the outset, this is the first of our kind of experiments in trying to do this 3D virtual design tour. So we hope to hear your comments and feedback on how this goes. So looking at the project here, we're looking at a floor plan of the new building, and with the main spaces highlighted, entry area, lobby, kitchen, and multi-purpose room. So as we kind of go into the Matterport, we're seeing views. These views are maybe a month old, a little more at this point. But we're coming into the new building. This would be the location of the front door. So if we were on site doing a hard hat tour like we would be in normal times, I would be welcoming you to the site, asking you to be careful about where you step, but I'll lead us through here, hopefully without any concern here. So this first space, if you remember from the floor plans, is a two-part lobby. And what I mean by that is RYSE has always maintained the idea that they have an open door to the community. There is in their existing building, and there will be in the new complex, a front room that anyone from the community during RYSE's hours can just come in. But then beyond that front room, there's a threshold. And when you go in the second set of doors, that's really when you've entered the campus. And beyond that point is a safe space for members. It's members who are going through, and then staff and RYSE's partners that are going through into the spaces beyond. I'm just going to give you a sense of that, that front room. So you see kind of the typical front space with a reception desk. There's a restroom off to the side. But then you see kind of the main doors that take you into the rest of the building and rest of the campus. So as we look at the project under construction, you'll notice it's a steel framed building. So in this project, we're using a prefabricated steel building. So it's actually a manufactured envelope and structure that we're working with, in this case, Nucor, as the manufacturer of the shell. And their shell provides kind of the backdrop for our, you can think of it as interior tenant improvements. There was a lot of back and forth during the design stage of, would this be conventionally framed? Would it be a prefabricated building? We ultimately settled on this system as a cost-effective, at the time thinking cost-effective route for constructing the building. But one thing that it really required was a lot of back and forth with the contractor who was brought on for pre-construction services, the manufacturer, to really get to what we felt were the most important aspects of the design, not things to lose as things get tweaked as you work with any manufacturer system. So, oh, clicked a little too far. So I'm going to just turn us around here. So I just took us through the second lobby, if you will. And here's some renderings of that space. So you can see and hear the connection back out to the courtyard and to the central open stair here. In the construction views, you saw that there was just a ladder there. But this is the stair that is going to be fabricated and put in place as the connection, one of two connections to the upper level. There's also an exterior stair that will connect directly into the courtyard. As you proceed through the second lobby, the space that I'm looking now in towards the exterior wall is the central kitchen of the campus. It was mentioned at the outset that access to food, the sort of centrality of food, and that there's no restrictions on food is really one piece of the puzzle that's really important to RYSE, and something that we didn't want to lose in moving to the new building. So this kitchen is just going to be directly connected to the lobby, and just as youth members are able to do now, they'll have access to the kitchen for snacks, and show you a rendering of that kitchen. And the kitchen will look out into a garden space beyond that. At this end of the garden will be a kitchen garden. So there will actually be food growing outside where this kitchen space is. So as we proceed further, the main room on the first floor of the new building is going to be this multi-purpose space. So just kind of looking around the space. So this space, by day, will function as a classroom, seminar, program space, but it can also be adapted for performances and events. I'll just show you rendering here. So this is the room sort of divided in kind of classroom or seminar mode, and then opened up for a performance. Dan, I don't know if at this point you wanted to speak a little bit about some of the events that happen at RYSE and some of the programs that you create there.
Yeah, so we do a lot, but a space like this is I mean, we've done poetry slams, academic lectures, we've done music performances, we do annual theatrical productions that we've always traditionally done offsite at El Cerrito Theater or other spaces, or East Bay Center for the Performing Arts, that we'll be able to do at RYSE now. So we can do theatrical performances, and I'll come back to that in a second. We've done, you know, I don't know if I just said mayoral candidate debates. We've done memorial services. We've done community meetings, like convenings, things like that. You know, staff retreat type of stuff. I mean, we do all kinds of stuff, but we've never really had a space in the building that could be as adaptive and as large as what we're looking at now. But it's really, really critical for the work that we do to have room to do all those things. And, you know, going back to what I was talking about before, you know, I think the architects knew one of the things was we need a performance space, but we couldn't just do like a theater that all, you know, it just sat. When it wasn't in use, it was just a theater and we weren't using it. So that's where this like black box theater came into play, which is like, what is something that would be functional as a classroom for programming during the day, but also be functional in these other ways. So it was, I think, a really good partnership to figure out like, okay, what were the needs that were trying to be met and what was the best way to do that with the space, and thinking forward about budget that we had to work with. And I don't know if we have time to go into it now, but there's actually a really great reconfiguration that APA came up with about where they placed our recording studio. So we actually have a recording studio that functions as a recording studio and the control room for this theater. And that was something that APA came up with to really save on space and make sure that we had everything that we need. Yeah, and I'm sure you'll probably use your mouse to point that out. This was not in the original design. Originally, it was like recording studio, theater space, but was able to like kind of bring those things together. So
yeah.
And then
on the floor plan, you see the multi-purpose room highlighted. Just to the kind of top right of it, that is going to be a control room that connects to a recording room, smaller recording room to one side, and then another room that's larger, that's the jam room. So that's where youth can go to jam, to play music, but it can also be used for larger recordings. So the control room that kind of connects to both of those also connects to the multi-purpose room. So it's serving both as the sound booth, light booth for the black box theater, as well as serving as a control room for recording, for voice recording, as well as music recording.
And then I'll just share one other quick thing about that space around like performances, theatrical performances. You know, I think it wasn't just RYSE thinking about this and what we do. I feel like the conversations around functionality were actually in partnership, even with the architects, because one of the things that I remember us talking about in a room together was, if we moved away from kind of a traditional theater that's oriented in this way, where everything was built in, it actually opened up possibilities and opportunities. If the stage, I mean, we have the light grid, right? So that stuff's set. But if the stage and the seating is modular, we actually could do all kinds of cool creative stuff. We could throw a stage in the middle of the room and have the audience sit in a 360-degree circle around it. We could orient traditionally if we wanted to do a movie screening. We could do a stage in each corner of the room. We could do a stage on, you know, the south wall and actually have the audience not sit, but physically move through the space and walk back out the room. And so it wasn't just RYSE or RYSE Young People or RYSE Media Arts and Culture staff like talking about that and then just telling the architects what we wanted. It was some of that, right? Like I was working with all those groups, but then really like, okay, if we move away from a theater and start thinking about the black box theater, what are the opportunities that actually exist there? And that was something that like the architects were involved in, that were critical voices in even how we would use the space one day. And that I think really speaks to just by the time we got to that point in conversations, APA understood us as an organization, and they understood RYSE so well that they felt like part of the team, talking through how we'd be using the space one day. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was just, it felt really organic, and it felt like at that point they understood RYSE as much as I did, or our staff did, or our young people did. So I just want to lift that piece up.
Yeah, no, thank you, Dan. You know, that's really nice to hear, and always our goal. I mean, one thing about APA is that our work is primarily centered in the nonprofit space. So most of our work is for affordable housing developers or service organizations like RYSE. So part of working in this arena is working with really great organizations that are doing such good work in the community, but facing all sorts of challenges, whether they be financial or otherwise, to just do the work and provide the services that are so critical for the community. So we hope that it's taught us to really listen and kind of collaborate with our clients. And it's ongoing. We're still having these conversations during construction. So unlike some project types where there's more of ability to really refine the documentation to a very high degree, get into construction, and you're really in implementation mode. This project and many of our nonprofit projects are really about being creative the whole way through, seeing what opportunities and challenges come up, and how to address them as you go through these projects. So just kind of going back into Matterport for a second. I'll touch on a couple other spaces as before we go up to the second floor. So this space I didn't touch on before is a yoga meditation studio, dance studio, so also serving multi-purposes, but connecting again to the outdoors. In this part of the garden, beyond, is going to be a contemplative healing garden. It was shown in part of the video, but really a space where youth members can connect to nature, which is so critical in terms of mental health, being able to kind of reset and focus, and there's a healing component to that connection with nature. So we're thinking about obviously the building, but also the connections of program. What programs best sort of live outside, and what programs live inside, and where are those connections between indoors and outdoors that kind of occur all over the campus at larger and bigger scales, larger and smaller scales, larger with the courtyard on the other side. And then just going to go into this part. So we're back in the multi-purpose room. And looking at the control room that was mentioned earlier, and then beyond. I'm going to go to the far end of the building and sort of look back. This is the jam room with a large window off of the hallway. So if you're hearing music and seeing music, you might be enticed to join in. There's these visual connections between different parts of the interior as well. and then the smaller room is the recording booth beyond. And then finally on this level, at the end of the hallway here, is the art room. And the art room will have garage doors that open out to a court. And this part of the courtyard is going to be a flex court. So it's part basketball court, part overflow and flex space for the art studio. So it's a nice day, you want to do art outside. This room can just entirely open out to the adjoining court, and that portion of the courtyard becomes part of the art room as well. And then looking back out at the central courtyard. So before I go up to the second floor, just wanted to remind you about the central courtyard and the intent for it. In the far right, you can see the flex court, the basketball function, as well as the art function happening. You can see there's a second floor terrace that overlooks that space. There's a walkway that connects between the two buildings, weather protected walkway that connects those central spaces at both buildings. But you're also seeing the main part of the courtyard with the large kind of specimen tree that we're thinking about. So I just wanted to mention about the landscape. The approach with the landscape design on the project was to really think about climate appropriate plants that are from California, but as well as all over the world. Really thinking about kind of the diversity that exists within Richmond, the diversity that exists within RYSE, and picking up on that with the landscape as well. So the co-inhabitants of the exterior space are plants that are local to California, but as well as plants that have adapted to California from all over the world. So the central tree is a South American floss silk tree. There's also around the courtyard and around the site agave from Mexico and Cape rushes from South Africa, just to name a few examples of the landscape around the site. But it's an urban landscape. So we're thinking of the central courtyard as a zocalo or public square. This is a space that not only connects the campus, and I mentioned it's an in-between space between those main interior spaces at each building, but it's also a space that can be opened up to the street for events, and the community can be invited in. So Dan, I was wondering if you could say a few words about some of the community events you hold and how the space is going to be used.
Yeah, I mean, so much of what we do is for community. So traditionally, we've had some kind of like large holiday event where we invite families, younger kids. So it's really an opportunity for our members, because we serve youth ages 13 to 21. Youth to bring their families in, their little brothers and sisters, things like that. We've done a Be a Kid event, which is really our annual event. We bring in community partners. Winston, you've been, they're a lot of fun, things like that. We've done summer jams where we have music, kind of traditional music festival style events. We've done those over the years. So yeah, a lot of ways to, a lot of events that engage our membership in just fun, safe, community building activities like the summer jams and whatnot, and then also community events that bring in either community partners and elected officials and supporters, or our members' families, or whatever. So we really are always looking for opportunities to to connect with the various stakeholders in the community, not just the youth members that we serve. And then looking forward, you know, this, well, I don't know how 2020 has changed this, but the original vision was to do like smaller conferences, convenings, things like that, that would utilize some of these outdoor spaces as well. So yeah, did that answer the question?
Yes, yeah, thank you. I thought I would also mention in this slide are the pop-up art spaces. So those are the two shipping containers that kind of line the sidewalk on either side of some central gates that would help open up the courtyard to the street. So we're thinking of these pop-up art spaces, and here's another view of them, as you know, additional flexible spaces for RYSE, but they really kind of dovetail into RYSE's efforts around art, around empowerment and entrepreneurship. So Dan, could you also mention a little bit about how those spaces will be used?
Yeah, so you know, we definitely are always focused on like workforce development, you know, small business development, you know, kind of economic kind of empowerment. And so we see these spaces as art spaces, a pop-up shop, maker spaces. They're kind of flex spaces where, as young folks are innovating, creating community-based solutions to community-based issues via products or services, that they can have access to like retail space at no cost, where we can continue to support like the incubation of ideas, small businesses for our members, before, you know, taking on the cost of trying to launch a retail business and all that entails, especially around space, that we could be an incubator for some of those micro enterprises. You know, a maker space where they could tinker with prototyping certain things. We've had a couple of clothing companies start out of our small art studio here in the existing space. So a place where young folks could sell clothing or CD, maybe not CDs anymore, but, you know, thumb drives of their music or posters or, you know, artwork, things like that. So kind of like flex multi-use spaces that are kind of used at the intersection of like arts and media, technology, and our like workforce development and micro enterprise kind of incubation elements of our work. So to some degree, they're flex spaces because we need to get in there and figure out how we're going to use them exactly, and that's part of what we're excited about. So you know, in 5 years, I'll probably be able to give you a much better answer of exactly how we're using those spaces. But right now, they're kind of flex spaces for the intersection of all those elements of our work. And frankly, young folks will push us and drive us in the direction we need to go with exactly how we use those spaces once they're able to kind of get in there and just work within them. So we'll see what they turn into exactly, but that's the thinking behind them.
Hey, Dan.
Yep.
Ursula has a question. Ursula, you want to just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question about the containers?
Yeah, thanks. Shipping containers are always interesting to work with. I mean, I've done it in other countries and it was been really problematic. You know, I had to go through the equivalent of the DMV to make sure that the shipping containers could be registered, they're not stolen, they haven't come from a country that's still looking for them, etc. So I just wondered if you could talk a little bit more about your experience here with the shipping containers. Have you got them yet, or what's your experience been to date on that? Thanks.
Yeah, so it's still in process. We're exploring a number of different ways, and this is part and parcel of kind of the continuous process of projects like this. You know, we're exploring different sources that might be cost effective, different ways of, you know, retrofitting and modifying them. You know, there's the idea of just obtaining shipping containers, and we've talked even to our general contractor, for example, of, you know, containers they have that, you know, we might be able to get donated to the project and just kind of repurpose. So that's sort of like the most basic idea of, you know someone who has one who's willing to donate or sell you a shipping container. But we're also talking to sources such as companies like Urban Block, who sort of have built a specialty around kind of working with shipping containers, modifying them. We've worked with them on a couple of different projects. It can be kind of expensive. So we're still very much in that kind of exploring different options moment. Dan, I wasn't sure if you wanted to add anything to that.
No, I think that's right. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, going the route like Urban Block, these companies that kind of have built a little niche in doing that because it's becoming more popular, you're paying a little bit, at least the numbers I've seen so far that we're considering, you're paying a little bit of a premium, but the headache is gone. It's just gone. So Ursula, some of the kind of what you were bringing up, that those are not concerns. If you go the route of like an Urban Block, they're not the only company. There's other ones that kind of have it down to like the permitting that, it is what it is. It's super simple. You're paying a premium for that as opposed to figuring out another solution, which is buying it yourself, getting it donated, working with welders that don't specifically do this stuff to chop them up and do all that kind of stuff. You might be able to save some dollars, but it's going to be a little bit trickier. You might run into other problems. Plus, I'm not even sure, honestly, how much you save at the end if you calculate, the architect's time and my time and staff time to sort through those other options. Maybe going the route of these specialists might make sense for a given project, depending on how many you're talking about or whatnot. So.
Yeah, and the level of modification. So, fortunately, I'm just doing a quick time check, and we're down to our last few minutes. The time has just flown by. So I just want to make sure participants get a chance to see what we're planning at the second floor as well as the existing building. So just very quickly on the second floor, you see the major spaces are a large conference room that'll be both used by RYSE as well as available to RYSE to potentially rent out for, a program with one of their partners or an outside group that might just want to rent and use this space. Provides some flexibility both on the kind of programmatic side for RYSE as well as kind of the operations and finances. You see a media and media space that's both for video editing as well as computer lab. There's going to be a lounge space that overlooks, so there's kind of like a bar counter that overlooks an opening down into the second lobby, the interior lobby downstairs. And you see the terrace off on the east end. So up on this level are administration spaces as well as counseling rooms. So the couple small rooms closest to the trellis are envisioned as small 1-2 person counseling rooms, and then the larger room with the chairs in a circle is thought as a group therapy room. Part of this is also changing. So RYSE has been working to actually kind of even look further ahead, and they've purchased a building on an adjacent site facing McDonald Avenue, and some of the clinic and health services that were thought for parts of the RYSE Commons campus might actually move into that building. So we're still in process, and some of this will shake out as the building gets completed, and there's a further assessment of, okay, now who is actually going to go into which space in which building in the main campus versus these additional buildings that RYSE has picked up. But just some of the thinking around some of the original programming of those spaces. And here's a rendering looking at the bar counter that overlooks the double height space and the that large conference room beyond. And just very quickly, the state of construction up at the second level, the conference room. The floor has been framed. It's just now starting to get the wall and storefront framing for that. The computer lab and media space off to the left there. Lounge beyond, and you can see off to the right in the image the terrace space. We can come back to this actually. And then just very quickly, the existing building is going to be the phase 2 of this project. We're currently going through a fair amount of value engineering, kind of reassessing where we are on budget. But just looking at kind of the main principles going into the renovation is to remove the donut, kind of create an open collaboration room that connects to the courtyard with a conference space off of it, space for what's called an innovation lab and additional breakout rooms, as well as some additional admin offices. Towards the street to the right, where there's another lobby, is envisioned some office space that will be used by RYSE's partners, so other organizations. So RYSE is looking at developing space that actually helps other organizations as well that they partner with. And then you saw this in the video, but some of the views of that collaboration space with its associated conference room and the ancillary spaces around it. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for the tour today. I know we're right at 1 o'clock, but I guess speaking for myself, and I'll let the other panelists say for themselves, totally willing to stick around for a few minutes to answer any questions. But before everyone leaves, I also wanted to quickly turn it over to Mike, who wanted to tell us about some upcoming programs, as well as invite you to also host or suggest tours of your own. So Mike?
Hi, Winston. First, let me just say, wow, that was really great. And I wanted to just be clear to everybody, thank you for participating. This was a bit of a tightrope walk. It's all new, experiential, switching between screens, putting it all online. So thank you for your patience. Thumbs up to Winston. That really, it actually worked pretty well. So I'm pleased, and we'll be doing more of these. If anyone on this call has any ideas about how we could utilize this sort of sharing platform, clearly this is for showing design and telling stories about projects for our members, but we're really open to trying to leverage this any way we can, so that during this tough time of COVID, people can come together and do more sharing. So let me just call out Dan, Isaiah, Cece. You guys did a great job. Thank you so much. I think the story is very well told, and we'll be posting this video in the next 24 hours or so, and heavily promoting it. And so thank you to everybody for coming today, and we'll see you guys at the next design tour. Thanks so much. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you. And if people have questions, totally willing to stick around for a few minutes. Dan, Isaiah, Cece. I don't know if you want to also.
Cece has a program she's got to jump to. Isaiah, you're more welcome to say. I can stay for a couple minutes. Isaiah, I don't know what programs you have or what.
And I'll leave the room open for as long as you guys need.
I do have some work to do. I have some video work to do.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Isaiah.
Thank you so much, Isaiah.
But I'll stay for us.
Hi, Vincent. That was great. Thanks very much for your time and for the work. I just posted a question regarding the frame of the building, the framing, the choice of steel. So maybe could you speak a little bit about that part? Thank you.
Yeah. So I mentioned at the beginning that we were really thinking about, and at that point is really my partner Anne, really thinking about how to kind of navigate the budget. It's an ambitious program for a limited budget. So we started exploring this idea of a prefabricated metal building. So something like a Butler building that's not uncommon in like agriculture and that sort of kind of lineage of architecture buildings. And it can be quite cost effective, but one of the things that, it's a learning process as well, that we discovered is, of course, they're not necessarily used to working with architects and working in a way that's very kind of dependent on iterations and modifications to their basic kit of parts. So they want to work with their kit of parts and deliver, and this is where the economy comes in, deliver this envelope in a way that they see is kind of most effective for a use of their members and cost. It's been a little bit of a struggle and a learning curve for us, kind of working with that system. We have the advantage of it being, the new building is 12,000 square feet. So within well within the limit that we could propose for a type 5B structure. So it's not, for the most part, we're not concerned with fire protection of the structural elements. The exceptions are that, we're building the building within 5 feet of the north property line. So we actually have to fire rate that face of the building. And we're going to be doing that through the use of rated panels on that side, and really managing kind of the percentage of unprotected openings and so forth through the code. The other area where fire ratings really come in is with the elevator, and it actually goes beyond fire rating. So you have the hoistway and the machine room with the typical 2-hour requirements. But the other limitation here was we got to a point in the project where the manufacturer just was not going to accept that the elevator structure was connected or part of their structure. So that's one of the reasons that you're seeing in the construction views that our elevator has turned into an independent concrete structural element with a seismic gap around it to the floors and wall assemblies of the construction around it. So it ends up being kind of a building within a building. So we've had a number of challenges like that. It's just kind of working with the system, but also running into kind of the limitations of the system, whether it be fire rating or structural independence of elements like the elevator. Does that answer your question?
Sure, more than a good answer. Thank you so much.
Sure.
That was a great successful project, and congratulations.
Oh, thank you. I'm not sure how many people are remaining on the call, but I think Mike mentioned at the outset that this is a test also for the AIA of how we run these virtual tours in the time of COVID when we can't all be together on site. So whether it's here or separately, I invite people to reach out to me separately or to Mike separately as well to get feedback on how you think this went, how we could improve it for the future, and definitely any tour suggestions or ideas that you may have for your projects. If hopefully you have a project that you think would be great to tour, or maybe a project of your own that you would love to host a tour of, we really invite you to kind of partner with us in AIA on bringing these kinds of programs forward for everyone. Cool. Well, I'm just looking in the chat. I think we've touched on everyone's questions. So I wanted to thank everyone again. Thanks especially to Dan Riley, Cece, and Isaiah from RYSE. Thank you so much for adding the client's perspective to this tour. It's certainly not a complete story without the whole kind of underpinnings and the insight and the kind of experience that you bring to the tour. So thank you to you, and thank you for everyone for joining us today on Zoom.
All right, bye everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye everyone.
Bye.
Thanks again.